I've been helping students become fluent, confident English speakers for over 10 years. Here's my best advice to help you become fluent in 2025. Let's start with 9 things I wish all English learners knew. Number 1, native speakers don't care about your grammar mistakes. I understand that you care about your grammar mistakes. I understand that your teacher cares about your grammar mistakes. And I understand that other students care about your grammar mistakes because as an English learner, you're in an English learner environment. But in the real world, the focus is not on your English skills. The focus is on how you communicate your message, your ideas. Is that a good idea that you shared? If it's a great idea, but you made a grammar mistake, that doesn't matter as long as your idea is great. And native speakers in the real world are not English teachers. They're not English learners. They don't know grammar. They never learned grammar. They don't care about grammar. And quite frankly, they think grammar is pretty boring.
This is boring.
But as long as you're understood and you're communicating great ideas, native speakers don't care about your grammar mistakes. And part of the reason that native speakers don't care about your grammar mistakes is number 2, native speakers don't speak perfect English. I'm an English teacher, so when I'm speaking to people, students, native speakers, my ear is very attuned to noticing grammar mistakes or awkward sentence structure or incorrect pronunciation. And let me tell you, I notice these 3 things from native speakers as well. Of course, not to the same degree or frequency as with students, but absolutely native speakers make mistakes. And often when a native speaker makes a mistake, even if someone said to them, oh, hey, you used the wrong verb tense, they would say, I don't care. Because remember, point 1, native speakers don't actually care about grammar mistakes. As long as they're communicating an idea, that is all that matters. So it's okay that you make grammar mistakes because native speakers, even myself as an English teacher, we don't speak perfect English. So you don't have to speak perfect English either. Number 3, you don't need to speak like a native. The truth is that you can have a thick accent, you can use direct translations, you can use incorrect grammar, and you can still be a great communicator. You can still get promoted in your career. How do I know this? Because I live in an English-speaking country. I interact with non-native English speakers all the time who are in high-level positions or who are succeeding in their life. And they do this without sounding like a native. Yes, I understand that as an English learner, of course you want to push yourself and of course you want to reduce your accent, sound more like an American or like a British speaker, use more natural expressions, and I certainly encourage you to do that, but don't let that prevent you from speaking now or from communicating now or from applying to that job now. You can speak confidently, give presentations, get your dream job with your English skills now, even if you don't sound like an American. Now, although you don't need to speak like a native, number 4, you do need to learn phrasal verbs, idioms, and expressions. You've probably already learned that native speakers don't speak like textbooks in the real world, which is part of the problem why you've been studying for so long, and yet you go out into the real world and you can't understand native speakers. It's because native speakers, we use phrasal verbs, idioms, and expressions that generally students don't learn or aren't comfortable with. So in order to confidently communicate in the real world with native speakers, you need to understand us. You can't have a conversation one way. Yes, you don't need to speak like a native, but you do need to understand natives because you can't have a conversation successfully if you don't understand the person you're talking to. And in order to understand natives, you have to expand your vocabulary with phrasal verbs, idioms, and expressions. But remember, you don't necessarily have to use them in your speech. You just have to be aware of them and know what they mean so you can understand natives, but you can use the expressions that you're more comfortable with because you've learned them your entire life. Number 5, there's a big difference between learning and using a language. One of the things that I know students struggle with the most is that they don't feel confident speaking. Or, like we just talked about, they can't understand native speakers, but they can understand their teacher. And the reason why is because students spend most of their time learning the language, absorbing the language, but not using the language. Students focus too much on input, absorbing the language, perhaps from watching these videos where I teach you inspiration and tips like this, or where I teach you specific grammar structures or vocabulary. That is excellent, and you absolutely need input. You need to know the phrasal verbs, idioms, and expressions. You need to know the grammar rules. You need to know the pronunciation rules as well. But what's missing often is that output, where you take that information you just learned and you practice it. You practice, practice, practice. You practice speaking, so you improve your speaking skills. You practice listening to real English, so you improve your listening skills. And that is the difference between learning a language, which is, of course, important, but using a language, which is equally important. I know a lot of students hesitate to speak in English because they don't feel confident. They have this fear, and it prevents them from getting that output, from taking their knowledge and using it by speaking with native speakers, giving presentations, going to job interviews. But that leads us to number 6, feeling nervous when speaking is normal. Did you know that public speaking is the greatest fear in the world? And this isn't for someone speaking in a foreign language. This is for someone speaking in their native language. Survey after survey show that public speaking is the number one fear. It's even a greater fear for people than the fear of death. So don't be concerned if you feel shy or nervous before speaking in a foreign language. The reality is that if you were to give a presentation in your native language, you would probably feel shy and nervous. When I first started teaching students, making YouTube videos, giving more presentations, I was terrified. And I still get nervous to this day, even after making hundreds, thousands of videos and presentations. Feeling nervous is normal, and feeling nervous is expected. The thing you need to remember is that you cannot wait for that feeling of nervousness to disappear. You have to take action now. You have to feel that nervousness in your body and still go to that presentation, go to that networking event, go to that job interview, go to that group with other native speakers. You can't wait for that fear of nervousness to disappear because you'll be waiting forever. The best way to get rid of that feeling in your body is by doing the action. The more you do the action, the more your body will get comfortable with that feeling, and that sensation will become less and less, even though it might still be there, even after you've been speaking for years and years. A lot of students feel disadvantaged because they don't have someone to speak with, or they live in a non-English speaking country. But number 7, you can improve your speaking alone. This is a hard one for students to accept. It's a hard one for me as a teacher to convince students to start doing, because they have this belief that in order to improve your speaking, someone must hear the conversation. The conversation must be two ways. But right now, I'm not having a conversation with anyone. There is nobody in front of me. I'm speaking to a camera. Do you think by doing these videos, I'm improving my public speaking skills? I'm learning how to articulate more clearly. I'm improving my confidence. I'm learning how to improve my body language, my delivery, my overall speech. Absolutely, I am. And I know that because if I go back and watch my very first video and I compare it to this video, there is a huge difference in how I communicate. And I am not speaking with anyone. You have yourself. You can absolutely open your mouth and start talking. But to improve your speaking skills, you have to open your mouth and have the sounds come out. You can't think it in your head because, yes, maybe that voice in your head is saying the words, but it is very different from actually opening the mouth and producing the sounds. You can speak by yourself, you can record yourself, you can look in the mirror, you can narrate your day as you're doing chores, you can ask yourself questions and answer. You can absolutely improve your speaking skills alone. Number 8, there is no finish line. The reality is that you're a lifelong English learner. You're never going to get to a point where you say, well, I've learned it all. I can throw out my dictionaries. I can cancel all my course subscriptions. I can unsubscribe from all English learning channels. Please don't unsubscribe because I have learned it all. You will never get to that point, and that's a very good thing. Imagine there was a doctor who went to medical school 10 years ago and never learned anything new after that. Would you want to fly in a plane and you learned that the pilot graduated from pilot school 20 years ago and had never tried to improve their skill after that? Of course not. Every profession is constantly learning. You're constantly improving your skills in everything that we do. And this isn't even just with learning, it's with your relationships with people, it's with how you do anything. You're always trying to improve these areas, and the same goes for your English. The reality is, if you're at A1 right now, the second you get to A2, you're going to push that further and say, okay, now my goal is B2 or B1. And then you're going to push that and say, now my goal is C1. Now my goal is C2. Okay, I got to the C2 level. Now what? Well, now my goal is learn how to present confidently. Now my goal is to write a book. Now my goal is to improve my body language. Now my goal is to give presentations to large groups of people. No matter what you achieve, you will always look towards the next goal, and that is a very good thing. You should celebrate that fact that you are a lifelong learner. And because you are a lifelong learner, number 9, enjoy the process. Let's say you decided to start a new hobby. So you choose soccer, and then you play a couple times and you realize, you know what? I don't really like this very much. Are you going to feel that motivated to improve your soccer skills, to go to soccer practice, to want and keep playing soccer? If you don't like the actual sport, then of course you're not going to feel that motivated to practice or improve. And the same goes with learning English. There are so many different ways to learn. And it really depends on your learning style as well. Maybe you prefer different styles of videos, different styles of learning techniques, different styles of exercises. But if you're following a specific learning method or a specific teacher and you don't really enjoy the process, well, then you're not going to feel very motivated to do it. But if you're in a program and you love the style of lessons, you find them so interesting and enjoyable, and you look forward to learning a new lesson, well, then it's going to make everything so much easier because you're going to be motivated to log into that course and complete the lesson. Or if you find a teacher on YouTube, hopefully me, then you're going to be motivated to watch a video from that teacher every single day. And the more exposure you get to a language, the faster you'll improve your skills. But if you aren't excited about how you're learning, just take some time and find a method that works for you because you need to enjoy the process. Because remember, you're a lifelong learner.
Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Now remember those 9 things, and let's move on to how to train your brain to think and speak in English.
You'll learn 4 proven ways that you can start using today, and you'll see results by the end of this week. And at the end, I'll share some bonus tips as well. Number 1, think during everyday activities. Think of all the things that you do in your everyday life that either are very routine, don't require a lot of conscious thought, or are pretty boring. For me, it would be getting showered in the morning, doing my makeup, doing my hair, and for a lot of people, it might be commuting to work. And then think of all the chores you do, doing the dishes, making your bed, all those various things that don't require conscious thought. Well, why don't you use that time to think in English? Now, you might be saying or thinking in your native language, perhaps, well, Jennifer, what should I think about? What can I think about? And here's the best part. In order to practice thinking in English, you just need to make very simple statements, very simple observations. You don't need to make it overly complex. You don't need to focus on certain grammar structures or vocabulary. Just look around and observe the room you're in and make a simple statement. Let's say you're brushing your teeth. As you go through that process, now remember, you don't have to say this out loud. You can simply think in your head, but think in English. As you pick up the toothpaste, think about that. I'm picking up the toothpaste. I'm taking off the cap. I'm putting toothpaste on my toothbrush. My toothbrush is very old. I should buy a new toothbrush. The toothpaste smells minty. I never noticed the color of the toothpaste before. Now think of how boring this conversation is. In your everyday life, you would never talk so much about toothpaste, your toothbrush, or brushing your teeth, right? But you are doing this in your head to practice thinking in English. And that's just one very simple thing that you do every day, 2 times a day, maybe 3 or more times a day. Think of all the other things and how you can simply make observations about that situation or about what you see around you, and you're going to make those observations in your head in English. As a tip, you can start with simple statements. My toothbrush is old, and then take that statement and try to make it more complex. Can you change the verb tense? Can you ask a question? Can you add an adjective? So you can purposely think of ways to make it more complex as an additional exercise, but start simple and then add on. So if you're committed to trying this exercise, put toothpaste in the comments. Why not? Number 2, speak out loud. When you think in your head, that is very beneficial to train your brain to start thinking in English, to start processing sentence structure, grammar, vocabulary in English. But thinking something in your head is not the same as opening your mouth and saying the words. Once you open your mouth and say the words, it's a different activity. You're practicing your speaking skills. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, well, Jennifer, of course I want to speak. This is the one thing I want to do in English, but I don't have anyone to speak with. I live in a country where there are no native speakers. That's okay, because there are easy ways that you can practice speaking on your own. My favorite way, and native speakers use this activity as well to practice their speaking skills, my favorite way is a website called Random Question Generator. All you need to Google is Random Question Generator. And there are many different websites. I will leave my favorite websites in the description. Now, what you can do with these websites is all you do is you click the button that generates a random question. Now, what you need to do is as soon as you see that question, I want you to open your mouth and start speaking. Don't think about grammar. Don't think about vocabulary. Don't think about pronunciation. Open your mouth and start speaking. Make it your goal to speak for 1 minute on that topic. You can record yourself speaking. You can just use the voice recorder app on your phone. You can also set a timer for 1 minute if you'd like. So when that timer goes off, then you know you've spoken for that amount of time. You don't need to do that. It's just an option. Now, after, you can listen to that recording and you can think about your pronunciation, grammar, sentence structure, vocabulary, and you can think of areas to improve. However, as you're doing the exercise, you're not thinking about your English. You're just speaking. But here's the best part. Because you have already taken the time to think in English every single day. Maybe you get 5, 10, even 20 minutes of practice where you're thinking, you're observing, you're making simple observations more complex. All of that practice that you just did will help you open your mouth and get the words out. Give this activity 1 week, then 2 weeks, then 30 days. I promise you, if you do this 3 times a day for just 2 to 3 minutes, 3 times a day, in 30 days, you are going to be so impressed with your results. So if you're committed to trying this exercise, put let's go in the comments. Number 3, describe images. This is a more guided method because when you describe an image, you can think in your mind, which is absolutely beneficial. I've already mentioned why. Or you can practice speaking out loud, and instead of using a random question generator, you are going to use an image. How are you going to find an image? You can simply go to Google Images and put a random word in, like cat or dog, and choose any image. Or you can go to a website that shares free images, like Pexels, which I'll put in the description as well, and just choose one of the first images on the home page. This is an exercise that I do with my students, and they absolutely love it. And the conversations that we have, the examples that they share are so interesting as well. Now, this is an activity that I do with my students for free on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe so you know the next time that I'm hosting a speaking class. So here's an image that I used in my last speaking class, and the students shared such interesting examples. Now, all you have to do is describe this image. You can make observations about how the people look, their clothing, the background, or you can make statements about what they're doing. So in this image, you might say the man wearing an orange shirt is kneeling. Or you might say, there's an umbrella next to the man. And again, you can make simple statements more complex. There's a bright, multicolored umbrella next to the man. You can even have fun with this and try to guess what is happening in this image. So this is what my students did. Some of them said that the man is proposing to the woman. Other people had funny things like the woman is helping the man because he fell. So it was really interesting the different observations that students made. So you can take any image and use this to both speak in your head, maybe on the way to work if you're on the bus or train, you can do this activity in your head, think in your head, or you can practice speaking out loud. So are you going to practice this activity? If you are, put I'm committed because I want to know that you're committed to practicing this activity, and I want you to be committed because I know the results that you're going to get are going to make you so confident, so happy, and so proud. Number 4, a daily summary. Now this is an activity that you should start doing regardless because preparing a daily summary is a great way to reflect on the day and ask yourself, what areas am I very proud of? What areas could I improve on? And this is just a great thing to do for your overall personal development, but we'll focus on how this activity can help you train your brain to think and speak in English. Well, the same thing that we talked about before. You can think these activities in your head, and if you are in a public place, this is a great time to just think the activities. If you are in a more private place, then you can say it out loud, and always remember the option is there to record yourself speaking. And with your daily summary, of course, you can summarize your day. You can talk about the best part of your day, the worst part of your day, 3 things you're grateful for, 3 things you're proud of, 3 things you want to improve. And the best part is you don't need to summarize your whole day, so you don't need to do this at night. Maybe your nights are very busy getting your kids ready for school or preparing for work the next day. So you could do this activity every day at noon, at lunchtime, and you can summarize your morning. So the daily summary doesn't have to be your entire day. You could summarize your morning, you could summarize a meeting at work, you could summarize your evening, or you can do this multiple times a day. So you could summarize your morning and then summarize your evening. So you have the opportunity to do this twice a day. Whatever works best for you, the more you practice, the faster you'll get results. I have 2 bonus tips for you. Bonus tip number 1, surround yourself in English as much as you can. Ask yourself, what can I do to make my environment more English? Can you change the settings on your phone or your computer? Can you start listening to English music? Can you start watching English TV shows? What can you do that's easy for you to do to make your environment more English? Can you put labels on all the items in a room or your entire house and their English labels? So think about one thing that you can do to make your environment more English, because of course, the more you surround yourself with the language, the more that your brain will absorb that language. And bonus tip number 2, the most important, is be patient. This is not going to dramatically change your English overnight, but in 7 days, you will see some results. In 14 days, you will see some results. In 30 days, you will see some results. But if you take those results from the 7 days, 14 days, and 30 days, guess what? The result is a lot bigger than you may realize. And that's only 30 days. Imagine you do these 4 very simple, free activities that only take a few minutes, and you do these activities every day for 90 days. Imagine the results that are possible. So be patient. How to speak English so good, native speakers are impressed.
I'm impressed. I'm impressed.
You'll learn 9 tips. Number 1, master the basics. It certainly will not impress anyone, not native speakers, not your teacher, not other students, if you say, I go store now. I'm sure you know that the correct way is to say, I'm going to the store now. But maybe you forgot that article. I'm going store now. Even forgetting one small word, the article, the store, or using the wrong verb tense, the present simple, I go, instead of the present continuous, I'm going, makes a big difference in how you communicate and how others receive your message. But don't worry, you don't need to master every single grammar concept in the English language. You only need to master the basics. There are 12 verb tenses in English, but only 6 verb tenses make up 96% of speech. This is why you should focus first on mastering the basics. Make sure you have correct sentence structure, basic grammar, and then you can keep improving and keep learning more advanced concepts. Number 2, use contractions. I know what you're thinking, but contractions are not slang. Contractions are grammatically correct. Contractions are not unprofessional. Contractions are used in professional and formal English. Contractions help your speech sound more friendly, fluid, and natural. Let's take this common greeting. If you say it without the contraction, it will be, how is it going? That doesn't sound impressive because it doesn't sound natural. A native speaker would say, how's it going? They would take how is and form a contraction, how's. How's it going? Repeat after me. How's it going? Now you'll impress a native speaker. Number 3, connect your words. A lot of students will pause between words, but this does not sound natural. It sounds very robotic and it makes your English level seem more beginner than it probably is. So if you pause between words, it definitely won't impress native speakers. Let's take the expression we used before. How's it going? So let's say you apply tip 2 and you use that contraction. How is how's? But you pause between those words. How's it going? This won't impress a native speaker. You need to combine those sounds. So repeat after me. How's it going? We have how's and it, so we can combine that together and it sounds like how's it? How's it? How's it going? And even though there is no connection between it and going, I still don't pause between them. How's it going? Repeat after me. How's it going? So if you connect your words, you will definitely impress natives. Number 4, use idioms and expressions. Congratulations, you already learned one that will help you sound natural and impress natives. How's it going? You can use this instead of asking, how are you? Or how are you doing? How's it going? And because you know how to pronounce it, you will feel confident using it. There are so many idioms and expressions in English, and you can just add a few every day or every week to help build your vocabulary so you impress natives. Let's start with some basic ones. Instead of I'm tired, what could you say that's an alternative way? More of an expression. You could say, I'm beat. I'm beat. Instead of I'm going to bed, I'm hitting the hay. Or instead of you did a great job, you rocked it. Most of my students already use this one because I use it with my students almost every video. You rocked it. You did a great job. So if you think I'm doing a great job with this video, why don't you show your encouragement, show your support, and put rocked it in the comments to practice this so you remember it so the next time you can use it with natives to impress. And if you don't like that expression, Find a different one. You can say, you rocked it, you killed it, you crushed it, you nailed it. All of those are commonly used and will impress natives. Number 5, use phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are not slang. Phrasal verbs are grammatically correct. Phrasal verbs are not unprofessional. Phrasal verbs are professional, friendly, and natural. And sometimes there is no other way to communicate an idea. Sometimes you must use a phrasal verb to correctly and naturally communicate this idea. Let's take a look at this image. What are the people doing? Maybe you could say they're leaving the bus. That is a direct translation. They're exiting the bus. Again, a direct translation. They're getting off the bus. This is the correct and natural way to communicate this idea. In this case, the phrasal verb get on to enter and get off to exit is the only word used to communicate this idea naturally in English. So you must use this phrasal verb to impress native speakers. Otherwise, it will sound like you're using awkward direct translations from your native language. Number 6, understand syllable stress. Since this lesson is on speaking, you must understand and use the concept of syllable stress, which may not exist in your native language, in order to speak in a natural way that impresses native speakers. In English, in every word that's more than one syllable, there is a stressed syllable and an unstressed syllable. Let's take this picture. What is this? Say it out loud. What is this? Did you say banana? Or did you say banana? Banana. Using the correct syllable stress will instantly make you sound more natural. So whenever you're learning a new word, you must learn the syllable stress. The phonetic alphabet tells you specifically where the stress is, and you can listen to an audio dictionary and listen for the syllable that sounds louder and longer. Banana, louder and longer. Na is the stressed syllable. Ba and are the unstressed. Banana. That's how you can say this word and impress native speakers. Number 7, vary your tone. Did you know that only 7% of communication is the words you say? 38% is your tone of voice, which represents the rising and falling of the sound of your voice. So you may already understand this concept because when you ask a question in English, a yes or no question, you have a rising intonation, which means the tone of your voice rises. Would you like a banana? Banana. So my tone comes up at the end. But notice how my tone changes when I say, I hate bananas. I hate. My tone comes down. I love bananas. My tone comes up on love. Imagine you just said, I hate bananas. I love bananas. Notice how different that sounds. The words are exactly the same. The only difference is my tone. In every sentence you say, there should be a rising and falling of your tone. This is something you can practice by recording yourself and listen back and ask yourself if you can hear those rises and falls. But you also don't want it to be too dramatic because that will not impress natives. Number 8, add body language. You already know that 7% of communication is your words, 38% is your tone, and that leaves 55% for, you guessed it, your body language. Let's look at this picture. Of course, there are no words, so we can't hear the tone of voice because there are no words. But these people are communicating a message. What are they communicating? I'm sure some emotions instantly come to your mind. some negative emotions instantly come to your mind. They are communicating even though there are no words. How about now? This is the same couple, but notice they're communicating an entirely different message, even though there are still no words, no tone of voice, because there are no words. It is only their body language that they're using to communicate. So when you record yourself to practice your intonation, why not use the video recorder instead of just audio, so you can look at yourself and look at your body language and ask yourself if any improvements could be made. Number 9, my personal favorite, smile. There are so many studies that show the importance of a smile. Did you know that even studies where people were talking on the phone, salespeople were rated higher when they delivered their sales script while smiling compared to while not smiling, even though this was a phone conversation? A smile is obvious even when you're talking on the phone, because when you smile, it raises your tone, which makes you sound more friendly. Imagine you go into a job interview and you say, "Hello, nice to meet you. My name's Jennifer." "Hi, nice to meet you. My name's Jennifer." Simply by adding that smile. Imagine I started this video and said, "Today you're going to learn 9 tips." Today you're going to learn 9 tips. Of course, a smile is very closely related to your tone of voice because, as I said, it raises your tone, and you need the appropriate body language to go with your smile as well. So when you're recording yourself and you're recording yourself with video, you can look back and watch yourself as you smile. Now, it is not natural to smile the entire time you're talking, so definitely don't do that. But as a fun exercise, you can review this video and review it for my tone of voice, my body language, and my smile. And why not rate me? I'm sure I still have areas to improve as well, and I'm constantly trying to improve how I communicate because I also want to impress native speakers and non-native speakers. I want to impress everyone with my message, especially you. Here are 14 signs that you're more fluent than you think. Number 1, you dream in English. When you're studying English, when you're watching a YouTube video like this, or even when you're speaking or reading English, you're using your conscious mind because you're awake. But when you go to sleep, you're using your subconscious mind. Now, if your subconscious mind uses English instead of your native language, that is a great sign. That means that the information that you're learning in English is being absorbed, because when we can do things automatically, it's because our subconscious mind understands those patterns and those behaviors. Think about it. You don't have to consciously think about tying your shoe or brushing your teeth. You don't think about moving the toothbrush side to side. Your subconscious mind does that for you because you have done it so much consciously that your subconscious mind knows how to do it automatically. So if you dream in English, it means that your subconscious mind understands the language. This is an amazing sign. Number 2, you know multiple ways of saying the same thing. The reality is that in English, and probably in every language, there are many different ways to say the same thing. Of course, I can say, "Oh, I'm tired." What else can I say? Can you think of one other way that I can say, "Oh, I'm tired"? If you know it, put it in the comments. And if you can think of one, that's a great sign that you're more fluent than you think. And if you can think of 2, 3, 4 different ways to say that, your English is excellent. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm beat, I'm spent. Did you get any of those? Maybe some other ways as well. Now, of course, I'm tired is an easier example. Think of some harder ones. Can you think of a different way to communicate same ideas in English? then you're more fluent than you think. Number 3, you understand different styles of English. I speak American English, but I can have a conversation with someone who speaks English from around the world, and there may be some things we don't understand with each other's style of English, but overall we can still communicate. I know different accents, I know different vocabulary in different parts of the world, and even in North America, which is incredibly large and diverse, I can tell if someone is from California or New York just based on their accent. So if you can speak to many different native speakers and you can understand different accents, different styles of speech, different vocabulary, that's a great sign that you're more fluent than you think. Now, you don't necessarily have to know that that speaker is from California or New York. That is not required, but simply being able to have these conversations, to understand the different speakers, that is a great sign. Number 4, you understand cultural references. When you're learning a language, many idioms, expressions, and phrases are based on cultural references. Now, this one is very place specific because honestly, I probably don't know a lot of cultural references from the UK or Australia. And if I'm talking to someone from that part of the world, they would have to explain that expression to me. So this one is very place specific. Think about the type of language that you're learning, whether it's British English or American English or Australian English. What if you're learning American English and your American coworker says to you, "Oh, I'm not having a good week with Uncle Sam." Do you know who Uncle Sam is? Well, there's a chance it is this man's uncle and his name is Sam, but most likely this is a cultural references and he's talking about the government, which is referred to as Uncle Sam. Or what if this coworker asks you what you're doing for Super Bowl Sunday? Would you know how to reply? Or what if this coworker wanted to have a discussion with you about Area 51? Would you know what that coworker is talking about? Of course, you don't need to know every cultural reference, and to be fair, I don't know every cultural reference either. It also depends on your age and where you're located. But if you understand the main cultural references, then you're definitely more fluent than you might think. This leads us to number 5, you can understand humor. A lot of humor is based on cultural references, so knowing those references will definitely help you understand humor. Also, a lot of humor is based on word play, where you take the meaning of a word, but that word has different meanings based on context. And the joke is only funny because it's using that word in a different way. This is why you're definitely more fluent than you might think if you understand these types of puns or wordplay jokes. How about this one? Why did the baker accept the job? Because he needed the dough. Da-da-da. Did you get that one? Well, to understand this simple joke, which a native speaker honestly would not find that funny, you need to understand many different things about English vocabulary. You need to know that the verb to knead is when you mix dough. You need to know that dough is a mixture of flour, water, eggs, and salt used to make bread or cakes. You need to know that knead has the exact same pronunciation as the verb to knead, and you need to know that dough is a casual way to refer to money in addition to the bread mixture. You need to know all of this in order to understand this very simple and not really funny joke. So if you understood that joke, or if you understand some jokes in English, your English is definitely better than you think. That leads us to number 6. You understand many idioms and expressions. Many English jokes are based on idioms and expressions as well, so that's why this is important. Plus, native speakers, our vocabulary is filled with idioms and expressions. But there are over 25,000 idioms and expressions. You don't need to know them all, but do you know 10, 20, 30, 50? Then your English is more fluent than you might think. If I said, that test was a piece of cake, or you hit the nail on the head, or if I said, when pigs fly, did you understand those three? Maybe you understood the first two, but not the last one, but that's okay because the last one isn't as common as the first two. So even if you understood 2 out of 3, your English is more fluent than you think. Number 7, you can use many different phrasal verbs. Now notice here I said use different phrasal verbs because a lot of students know phrasal verbs, they might recognize them, but being fluent, being more fluent than you might think requires that you can use them because using phrasal verbs is complicated. The sentence structure changes. The meaning really depends on how you're using it as well. Maybe you can say, did you figure it out? But you also know that you need to say, did you get over it? So you know that the placement of the pronoun is different for these two phrasal verbs. Or you know that sometimes you need an additional preposition, like don't give up on learning phrasal verbs. And did you get that gerund verb? So if you can use many phrasal verbs correctly, your English is definitely more fluent than you think. Number 8, you know when you've made a mistake. Making mistakes in English is normal and it is going to happen. But let's say you're speaking and you say out loud, I think I figured out it. But then the second you said that, in your mind, you know, oh, I didn't say that correctly. So you said it incorrectly. You made a mistake, but you know you made a mistake and you know instantly that you made a mistake. That's actually a great sign. This means that you're able to self-correct and you know when you make a mistake. This isn't a sign that your English is bad or that your English isn't fluent. This is simply a sign that you haven't practiced that specific expression enough for your subconscious mind to know how to use it automatically. So you just need more repetition. But the fact that you can identify your mistakes, maybe it's a mistake with grammar, sentence structure, subject-verb agreement, maybe it's a mistake with pronunciation, but if you can recognize those mistakes, that's an amazing sign. Number 9, you can speak or read without translating. This is an important one that you probably know about, one that might frustrate you because you still have to translate in your head. But the reason why you have to translate in your head is likely because you haven't learned enough full expressions, so you're thinking about individual words and trying to translate those individual words rather than taking a full idea and know how to communicate that in English. So again, if you know the phrasal verbs, the idioms and expressions, then you can likely already speak without translating because you're using full expressions. And of course, if you can't yet, keep practicing. And I know all my videos will help you with that. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Number 10, you can speak without long pauses between your words. If you speak, but you add a lot of pauses, this is a sign that the words aren't coming automatically. You have to think too much about sentence structure, about subject-verb agreement, about the right word, or you're just simply overthinking it and you're being a perfectionist and is preventing you from getting the words out. You do not have to speak as quickly as I'm speaking now, but if you have pauses, that's definitely not a good sign. So if you're able to speak, even in short sentences, but without pauses, you are more fluent than you think. Number 11, you use contractions. Do you say I am good or I'm good? I did not go, I didn't go. I have been well, I've been well. If you use contractions in speaking and writing and you feel comfortable and confident doing that, you know when it's appropriate and perhaps when you shouldn't, then your English is definitely more fluent than you think. Number 12, you can use shorthand English. Have you ever replied back to someone and simply said, "Been busy"? Or maybe you ask someone a question and you say, "You coming tonight?" If you know how to use shorthand English, where you know informally that you can drop the subject and the auxiliary verb in certain situations, and you know those situations, well then your English is definitely more fluent than you think, because this is something that native speakers do as part of our speech. We don't even recognize or know that we're doing it. We just say, "Been busy," instead of "I've been busy." So if you know how to do that, congratulations. Number 13, you can change from informal to formal speech instantly. Let's say you're talking to your coworker. Let's say you want to ask your coworker for help. So you go up to your coworker and you say, "Do you have a sec to help me out?" But then you see the vice president of the company walk by and you say, "Jane, if your schedule allows, I'd love to run an idea by you." Notice how you use more informal language with your coworker and more formal but still casual language with the vice president. If you can do this, and you can do this instantly without having to really think about it, and you know what style of language to use, what words to use, how to replace a simple word with a more advanced word depending on the situation, that is an amazing sign. Number 14, you're listening to this video without closed captions. Tell me the truth. That little CC button at the bottom, did you turn it on? Do you see the text of this video? Or are you listening to this without closed captions? Now, maybe closed captions are automatically on for you, but you're not really looking at them, you're not relying on them, you're really listening to me. Maybe you're not even watching the video, maybe you're driving or you're doing your makeup, you're doing the dishes, and you're just listening. But if instead you are reading the text and you can't rely on your listening skills and you rely on closed captions, that is a sign that your English isn't at that high level yet, because you can't go into a job interview or a presentation and ask someone to give you the transcript of the conversation. That isn't a possibility in the real world. But if you're able to listen to this video or TV shows or the news or any content without subtitles, then that's a great sign your English is more fluent than you think. Don't worry if you cannot do many of the things on this list, because that's why this YouTube channel exists. Every single point that I've made on this list, these are all things that I already have existing videos on, or I'll make a video on it in the future. So don't worry, you're in the right place. You're going to improve all of these areas. And for now, you can think of the one area you want to focus on the most. Use my library of videos to help you improve that area as well.
Have you ever felt stuck in a conversation because you couldn't think of the right word or you didn't know how to respond? Let's fix that. Today, you'll learn how to speak fluently in English about anything. Of course, to speak fluently in English, you need a wide range of vocabulary, correct grammar, correct pronunciation, and listening skills. I have hundreds of videos on my channel to help you improve all of these areas every week. In this video, you'll learn how to speak fluently in English about anything with the language skills you have now. Step 1, active listening. When people speak to you, do you find yourself thinking about what you're going to say next as the person is speaking? Maybe you're thinking about what verb tense you need as the person is speaking. Or maybe you're even thinking about some task you need to do later on. Maybe you're thinking about what to have for dinner as the person is speaking. Does that ever happen to you? Be honest. The answer is probably yes, isn't it? How can I say this with such certainty? Because I'm guilty of this too. So if this ever happens to you, put that's me in the comments so I'm not all alone. Now, when this happens, you can say that your mind wanders. That's the term in English, your mind wanders, or that you zoned out. You can say that as well. But it's very difficult to speak confidently in response to what someone said if you weren't even listening in the first place, right? To improve your speaking skills, you need to become an active listener. Not only will this help you with your English fluency, it will also improve all your relationships because listening to someone, truly listening to someone, is a sign of respect. When someone is speaking, pay full attention. To help you do that, focus on their lips, focus on their eyes, focus on their face as a whole, focus on their body language. And when your mind starts to wander, because it will, you need to instantly bring your attention back to the person. This takes work. As you're listening, you will naturally think of questions you may want to ask, points you want to clarify, or details you want more information on. So when it's your turn to speak, you will have so many ideas to prevent those awkward silences and to help you keep the conversation going. Step 2, be interested more than interesting. What do I mean by this? Have you ever had a conversation with someone and you can tell that that person is more interested in talking about themselves than they are in talking to you or learning about you or showing interest in your day, your life, your dreams? What if you met someone and when you told them something, you felt like they truly listened? And you felt like they were truly interested in what you just said? I imagine you would think very positively about that person, and you would want to spend more time with that person. Am I right? When you're having conversations with people, show that you're interested in them. How can you do this? Well, the easiest way to do this is by asking questions. Let's say I just got back from a 7-day trip in Texas. This is true. I did just get back from a 7-day trip in Texas. I want you to think of one question that you can ask me about my trip to show me that you're interested in me. So pause the video if you need and think of one question, just one question you can ask me about my trip. Do you have it? Do you have a question? Feel free to leave your question in the comments. Okay, now I want you to think of 2 more questions. So for a total of 3. Again, pause the video, take as much time as you need. And feel free to leave your questions in the comments. I promise I'll answer as many as I can. Now let me ask you, was thinking of 1 question, 2 questions, 3 questions, was that easy for you or difficult for you? What if I asked you to think of 50 questions you could ask me about my trip to Texas? Could you do that? Maybe you think that's not possible, that's too difficult, but I promise you that I could easily come up with 50 questions to ask someone about their 7-day trip in Texas. And I can do this because I've practiced being interested in others by asking questions. The easiest way to think of questions is to think of categories. So for a trip, the categories could be transportation, food, weather, entertainment, people, nature, likes, dislikes, recommendations, future travel plans. And for each category, You need to think of some questions. Now, you could easily come up with 5 questions to ask for each category, and there were 10 categories, so that's a total of 50 questions. And you could keep a conversation going for hours and hours and hours just by asking questions. And you'll naturally have more questions based on the person's answers to your initial questions, right? But of course, you can't just ask questions. That would be weird. You need to share your ideas too. And you need to do it fluently and confidently. So step 3, structure your ideas. The easiest way to sound fluent, confident, and professional while speaking is to structure your ideas. Think of this video. This video follows a very specific structure, as do books, movies, meetings, everyday conversations. I didn't start this video by saying, tip 1, improve your listening, because that would be confusing. It would be like starting a new book, and the first sentence is, she had to work late to finish the report. Who is she? Where does she work? What report? Why is this important? What are you talking about? Before you start talking, you need an introduction that prepares your listener for what you're about to say. You can have a more formal introduction like, today we'll discuss 3 strategies to improve your listening skills. Or you can have a more casual introduction like, I'm so excited for my 7-day trip to Texas. Now you know I'm going on a trip. It's 7 days. It's to Texas, and I'm excited. Think about everything I communicated with this simple introduction. Now you'll have your body. This is where you'll share your main ideas. So for the first example, I would share the 3 strategies to improve your listening skills. And in the second example, I would give you more information about my trip to Texas. The body is where you can include details that describe the who, what, when, where, why, and how. These are the WHs. Now, to think about what to say in the body, I would simply think of the WH questions, but answer it. Why did you choose Texas? Who are you going with? Where are you staying in Texas? The answer to these questions would form my body. So I could say, I'm going to Texas because I've always wanted to visit the southern US and experience their warm hospitality and delicious southern cuisine. I also really want to see cowboys walking down the street. How cool would that be? My husband and I are staying in San Antonio, where we found an amazing Airbnb right on the river. And then we're heading to Austin for some nightlife, and we found an Airbnb right near downtown. Now that's my body, so now you just need a conclusion. This video can't just end after this sentence. That would be awkward.
What just happened?
I have to say something to let you know I'm done talking. I could summarize what you just learned and say, now you know how to speak fluently about anything. And for my Texas trip, I could say something like, I know it's going to be a great trip. Now, if you follow this simple structure, remember introduction, body with WH answers, and conclusion, you will easily expand on your ideas and realize that you can speak fluently about basically anything. And remember, while the person is talking and hopefully structuring their ideas, you are actively listening. And you're going to keep the conversation going by being interested and by asking questions.
What if I told you there are only 2 things that you need to become fluent? Would that make you feel relieved because it takes some of the complication and overwhelm out of becoming fluent? Well, that's exactly what you'll learn today. The first thing you need is, of course, input, knowledge coming in, knowledge that you've gained. And how do you gain this knowledge? Well, by consuming. And there are 3 different ways that you can consume, that you can get input, and they relate to your senses. You can read with your eyes, you can listen with your ears, or you can use your eyes and ears with watching, like you're doing right now. Of course, this makes sense. You already know this. In order to become fluent, you need input. You need knowledge gained through consumption. So if this makes sense to you, put input in the comments. Now let's make this interactive. What are some of your favorite ways that you can get input through reading? Put one favorite way in the comments. Well, of course, for reading, you can read articles, you can read newspapers, you can read blog posts, but even reading the comment section of a YouTube lesson, this YouTube lesson, or any other social media video, you can learn a lot by reading the comments. Keep in mind, you will learn a lot of slang English and inappropriate English, but still you can get a lot of input by reading things. Even when you're driving in your car or you're commuting on the train or subway, you're exposed to input. You see advertisements that you quickly read. And I'm sharing these examples because I want you to understand that you get input, consumption of the language in so many natural ways that you probably don't realize. And that's why you want to always look for simple strategies to maximize your input, but without necessarily spending more effort. So let's brainstorm one together. What could be a simple way that you can get more input of reading English that would not take you any more time or would take you a small amount of time? Any ideas? Share any idea in the comment. We're just brainstorming. So how about this? You could change your cell phone, your device, your computer to English only. And then everything you see is input in English. And again, it may seem like a very small change, and it is a very small change. It's certainly not something that takes a long time to do. But simply by looking at your phone, looking at your computer, and seeing English, you are getting input, and that input is helping you become fluent. Input, input, input. Put that in the comments 3 times just to show you how important it is. Input, input, input. And I want you to look for ways, get creative, find ways to get more input without putting in a lot of effort. So reading, how about listening? This is an easy one, listening. Well, you're listening to me right now. Maybe you're not actually watching the video because you're putting on your makeup or preparing lunch. So you're just listening, you're getting input. Podcasts are a great example of listening. What else? How else can you get input through listening? Put your examples in the comments. I know you know them. And by sharing these examples in the comments, I want you to be able to look in the comments, get that input for reading, but also brainstorm many other ways you can maximize your input. Of course, you can listen to music. You can listen to music as you're preparing lunch, as you're putting on your makeup, as you're commuting, as long as it's safe, of course. You can listen to anything, really. So anything that you can listen to is input. Music, podcasts, those are great ones. Now, maybe another way you get input is listening to native speakers. So there is a negative habit called eavesdropping. When you eavesdrop, it means you listen to someone else's conversation, but you shouldn't be listening to that conversation. But if you are in an English-speaking environment and you're at a cafe, you're just naturally going to hear the conversations of people around you. So you can do that in a very subtle way. Now, if you don't live in an English speaking country or a country where there is a lot of exposure to English, well, you can still be at a cafe and put on a podcast in the background or some music in the background to get that listening input. Now, watching my videos. So of course, make sure you subscribe and like this video while you're at it. If you're finding value in this, like this video, subscribe, watching my videos, watching other English learning videos, of course, watching what else? How else can you get input through watching? Put it in the comments because again, we're just brainstorming. Well, I'm sure you've thought of many others. You can watch TV, movies, of course, watching social media. You're not just listening, you're not just reading. A lot of the times you're getting all three of these on social media. So although social media can be something that really takes up a lot of your time, if you use it strategically, you can use the time you're on social media to maximize your input of English. So social media, TV, movies, you can maximize your input. I'm sure there are other ways to get input, so share your favorite way and share some tips on how you maximize your input in the comments to inspire everyone else. Because remember, you can go to that comment section and get input through reading. And of course, through this input, you're improving all areas that you need for fluency, your grammar, your vocabulary, your listening skills, and your pronunciation as well. But a tip that's very important is that you should focus as much as possible on comprehensible input. What does that mean? Any idea? Comprehensible input? Well, if something is comprehensible, it means you comprehend it, you understand it. And this is where you need to be careful because yes, you want to push yourself outside of your capabilities, your current level of English. You do want to push yourself, but you don't want to push yourself so far where you're reading a news article and you don't understand every third word. And you read the first 2 paragraphs and you don't understand anything. At that point, you're not getting the input that will be most valuable to you because that isn't comprehensible input. So the best thing to do is spend about 80% of your time getting comprehensible input. And that doesn't mean you understand every word of what you're reading or what you're listening to. It means you understand the main idea. So spend about 80% of your time on comprehensible input and then push yourself outside of your current level and spend about 20% of your time exposing yourself to more advanced topics. Before we move on to number 2, I want to let you know you can get this free speaking guide, How to Speak English Fluently and Confidently in 6 Easy Steps. Just look in the description for the link. Now let's move on to number 2. Any idea what this is? Well, if number 1 is input, what do you think number 2 is? Put it in the comments. Number 2 is, of course, output. Is that what you put in the comments? And this quote by Tony Robbins perfectly describes why output is essential for fluency, because knowledge, which is input is the knowledge gained. Knowledge isn't power. Knowledge is only potential power. Action, in your case, through output, action is power. I'm sure you understand the importance of this quote. Please take a screenshot right now or pause this video, write it down. Someone please put this in the comments as well, because this is such a powerful quote. You should put this on a sticky note. Somewhere you'll see it every day. That's how powerful it is. Knowledge is only potential power. You might know all the verb tenses in English, and you spent months studying them and learning them. But if you don't do anything with that knowledge through writing an article and publishing it somewhere, or going to a job interview or sharing your ideas in a meeting, if you don't take that knowledge and use it, what good is that knowledge to you? It's only potential power. It's by taking that action through output that you use that knowledge and gain the benefits from it. With output, you use your input to produce language. And you do this in basically two ways. You're either speaking, you produce language, or you're writing. That's how you produce language. Here's the mistake that many students make, and maybe you're making this mistake, and that's okay if you are. But students get too much input compared to output. So they get maybe 90%, 95% of the time they're getting input, and maybe it's a little bit less, a little bit more. So that only leaves about 5% of the time to produce language for output. And students do this at all levels. At the beginner level, they feel, oh, I need more input before I start producing output. But that's not true, because you can produce output at the level you are now. So produce beginner output if you're a beginner. And then when you move up to intermediate or advanced, then you can produce more advanced output. But for now, it's totally acceptable to have beginner output. But even as a beginner, you still need output. So we need to go from this side to a more balanced. Now, you might be a little surprised that I'm recommending 70-30, not 50-50. 70% input, 30% output. This is reflective of how we live our lives. Even myself, in English, my native language, I still spend most of my time getting input. I don't speak or write 50% of the time. I definitely get more input than I do output. And as a language learner, in order to reach that fluency, in order to produce the output, you need a lot of input. So this is why I'm not recommending 50-50, and it's totally acceptable to have more input than output. But we do need more balance than what I see students getting now. Here's my advice to you. Plan for output when getting input. Let me repeat that. Plan for output when getting input. This will help make sure you have that correct balance of input and output, and you're getting the two things that you absolutely need to be fluent. Remember that quote by Tony Robbins: input knowledge is only potential power. Let's use a video series of mine that students love. My series called Learn English with the News. If you're not familiar with this, I have a whole playlist on my channel. You can watch them after this video. So when we learn English with the news, well, it's pretty obvious. We read a news article together. We read, but I read it out loud. So you're actually getting both reading practice and listening practice for input. So it's very powerful. We read a news article together, and I teach you the vocabulary from that article I think you might not know. I teach you grammatical structures, and I teach you correct pronunciation. So I try to help you improve all areas of your fluency at the same time in a fun and engaging way by learning English with the news. So let's think about this. How could you plan for output when you're getting input, when you're watching Learn English with the News? Let's brainstorm this. Think of one way that you can use this lesson. You're watching one of my lessons. How can you get output? Brainstorm anything. Put it in the comments. So to get output, how about when I give you a new vocabulary word and I share the definition, why don't you pause the video and repeat it out loud? So you are getting output. You're producing language. You're using the input to get output. And this fits with our ratio of 70-30 because in this lesson, you will be listening about 70% or more and producing language, getting output about 30%. So that would work. So you can pause the video and repeat the word and the definition out loud. That repetition will be so valuable to add that to your permanent memory. What else could you do? Well, if the video is already paused, why don't you write an example sentence with that new word? Or write an example sentence with that new grammatical structure? Why don't you form your own sentence out loud and get speech? Why don't you summarize the article? Because in each lesson, we discuss a topic in the news. So at the end, you can summarize the article, or you could ask some follow-up questions about the topic in that article. You could, of course, share your opinion on the topic of the article. You could create your own quiz about the vocabulary or grammar that you learned in the article. You could shadow my pronunciation because at the end of the lesson, I always read the article in full. But you can listen to one sentence, pause it, repeat it out loud, and shadow my pronunciation. So you don't have to do all of those things. I'm just giving you options. And please think of some other options, share them with your fellow students in the comments as well. And this is how you can plan for output when you're getting input to make sure you have more of a balance of 70% input and 30% output.
What if I told you that by the end of this lesson, your speaking skills will be 10% better, 20% better, 50% better, or even 80% better? I promise that by the end of this lesson, you will have the plan that you need to dramatically improve your speaking skills. Imagine you told your friend that you're learning how to play piano, and you told your friend that you spend time every day watching videos on how to play piano, studying piano theory books, and even listening to piano music. Your friend says, well, that sounds great, but how much time do you spend playing piano? And you reply back and say, oh, I'm not ready to play yet. I need to learn more before I start playing. Your friend will, of course, be confused because the only way you learn how to play piano is by playing piano. Of course, learning about piano theory will help you improve, but you will not reach your goal until you sit down and play piano. At first, it will feel awkward and uncomfortable. You will sound terrible. You will make a lot of mistakes. And guess what? This is exactly how you learn piano. The same goes for your speaking skills. If you want to improve your speaking skills every week, you need to practice speaking every week. Yes, it will feel awkward and uncomfortable. Yes, you will make a lot of mistakes. Yes, you will pause and hesitate. This is exactly what needs to happen for you to improve. The more you practice, the more you'll improve. But let me be clear, you must speak if you want to improve your speaking. Do you agree with that? Does that make sense to you? If it does, put that's right in the comments. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that someone needs to listen to your friend playing piano in order for your friend to improve their piano skills? If your friend is playing piano in a room alone with nobody listening, is your friend still practicing? What do you think? Yes or no? Put your choice in the comments. Did you say, well, yes, of course my friend is still practicing, even if my friend is playing piano in a room alone with nobody listening? Do you agree with that? Well then, doesn't it make sense that you can also improve your speaking skills by speaking in a room alone without anyone listening? Can you prepare for a job interview by practicing how you're going to answer a question in a room alone? If you practice answering job interview questions in a room alone, will you feel more confident answering that question in a job interview while people are listening to you? What do you think? Yes or no? I hope you said yes, I will feel more confident by practicing what I'm going to say, even if I'm practicing alone. And if you answered yes, then it also makes sense that you can improve all areas of your speaking by practicing alone. You can practice ordering a cup of coffee alone. You can practice asking for directions alone. You can practice introducing yourself at a party alone. Not only can you practice these things alone, you should practice these things alone. Even if you have a teacher or a speaking partner, that person is only available for a few minutes a day or week, but you are available to yourself every second of every day. If you agree with me so far, then you must also agree that you truly have no excuse to not practice and improve your speaking skills. Now, I understand that speaking alone can be boring. So here are 3 easy and free strategies to make speaking alone fun and engaging. Number 1, random question generator. These are free websites that randomly generate endless questions that you can answer to practice speaking alone. Once you generate a question, make it your goal to talk for 1 minute. And then you can generate another question, and another question, and another question, and practice speaking for as long as you want. Number 2, ChatGPT. You can ask ChatGPT to start a dialogue with you to practice speaking. So here's the prompt that you can use. I want to practice speaking English. Write a dialogue where you provide only one part of the conversation so I can respond to practice speaking. So as you can see, ChatGPT replied with a very simple question. Hi, how are you today? And now you can hit the microphone button on your phone and then vocalize your reply and submit it to ChatGPT. So let me do that now. I'm great. I'm recording a video to help my students improve their speaking skills. Now notice that ChatGPT asked me a follow-up question. That sounds like a fantastic idea. What kind of speaking exercises are you planning for them? So let me reply to this. I'm planning exercises where they can practice speaking alone. And notice ChatGPT again asks me a follow-up question. And this will keep happening. ChatGPT will keep asking me questions to get me speaking. And I don't know what ChatGPT is going to ask me next. So this truly is like if you're at a party and someone asks you a question, you don't know what they're going to ask you. Now, at any point, you can change the conversation and just give ChatGPT a specific topic. Let's discuss movies. So now notice ChatGPT asked me a question about movies. Number 3, narrate your day. To narrate means to explain what happened. For this activity, you're going to vocalize your actions throughout the day. You can do this anytime you're alone or anytime you feel comfortable speaking out loud in public. Let's say I'm at home alone and I'm working at my computer and I decide I want to take a break and have a cup of tea. It will take me approximately 5 minutes to make a cup of tea. This gives me 5 minutes to practice speaking out loud. I can summarize what I've already done today. I can summarize what I still need to do today. I can talk about tea and discuss my favorite flavors. I can compare tea to coffee. I can share my opinion on beverages. It doesn't matter what you say. It only matters that you practice speaking out loud. You can easily do these 3 activities multiple times per day. And you can easily get 1 hour or more of speaking practice every single day. If you practice speaking in English every day for an hour a day, would you not agree that your speaking skills and confidence will improve? I'm sure that you would agree that yes, my speaking skills will improve. So put yes, yes in the comments below. Remember that this video is on improving your speaking skills specifically. Of course, you need to expand your vocabulary, improve your grammar, improve your listening skills, and learn correct pronunciation. But knowing the theory of a grammar rule does not mean you can confidently use it in your speech. Just like knowing the names of piano keys or knowing piano theory does not mean you can sit down and play piano. And that's why your daily speaking should be done as a separate activity. This is a smart strategy that will help you see greater improvements in your overall fluency in less time. Did you know that you can speak fluently in English with a limited vocabulary? I have many videos on my channel to help you expand your vocabulary because of course this is a priority, but you don't need to wait to start speaking until you learn more words. Today you'll learn how to speak English fluently with a limited vocabulary. First, let's define what speaking fluently is not. It's not speaking perfectly without mistakes. It's not speaking endlessly. It's not speaking like a native. It's not replacing everyday words with phrasal verbs, idioms, and advanced words. Fluency is communicating ideas clearly and smoothly. Fluency is the ability to manage conversations with confidence and ease. Now let's review some tips on how to speak fluently with a limited vocabulary. Tip number 1, focus on the words you know. I'm sure one of your goals is to expand your vocabulary, and I'm sure every day or every week you watch YouTube videos like mine to help you learn other ways to express yourself. But what about the words you already know? How often do you use those words? This is like filling your closet with new shirts every day, but never wearing any of them. This is wasted money, right? Wouldn't it make sense to wear the shirts you already own and only buy new shirts when you need them? The same is true for your vocabulary. Yes, expanding your vocabulary is important, but it's equally important to practice and use the words you already know but aren't regularly using. Your vocabulary will likely double just by using the words you've already learned in your daily speech. For your action step this week, write down 10 words you already know but aren't using. Make it your goal to practice and use these words in your daily speech. Tip number 2, use frameworks. I know many students lose their words when they speak. They can only provide very brief answers, or they can only offer a few words before hesitating. Learning a simple communications framework can solve all of these problems and help you communicate fluently and confidently. Let's say you're talking to someone and they ask you how your weekend was. You can simply say, "It was great," but that's a very short answer. Sure, you didn't make any grammar mistakes, but I'm sure you have more you want to say. Maybe you think you lack the words. But what if the problem isn't the lack of words? The problem is you lack a simple framework you can use to answer any question. One simple framework you can start using today is the PREP framework. Did you know that the word prep is the short form for the word prepare? Native speakers frequently use this in everyday speech. For example, I have to prep for the meeting tomorrow. The PREP framework will help you prepare for any conversation you have. PREP stands for point, reason, expand, point. Remember, someone started a conversation with you and said, "How was your weekend?" Now, you can answer using the PREP framework. Your point is the main answer. It was great. Now, you can expand on this by providing the reason. It was great. We relaxed and watched a movie at home. This is already a more fluent answer, and it uses very simple vocabulary that I'm sure you know. Let's keep going and expand on this answer. You can expand by providing more information or an example. Here you can simply state what movie you watched. Now you can say, "It was great. We relaxed and watched a movie at home. The movie was called Arthur the King, and it was about a man who found and rescued a stray dog while competing in a race abroad." I'm sure you agree that this answer sounds a lot more fluent than simply saying, "My weekend was great." And notice that I'm using very simple vocabulary that you likely already know. The final point in our framework is point. This is your conclusion. It's a final statement to end your answer. Here, it makes sense to provide a final statement either about the movie or the weekend overall. You can say, "It was an excellent movie and I recommend it." I'm sure you would feel very fluent and very confident if you provided this answer to a simple question like, "How was your weekend?" And remember, this uses simple B1 vocabulary you likely already know. You can absolutely replace some common words with more advanced words, or even keep expanding on your answer, but that isn't required to speak fluently. For your action step this week, practice answering questions using the PREP framework. You can Google Random Question Generator for a website that will give you endless questions that you can use to practice the PREP framework. Tip number 3, handling vocabulary gaps. When you have a limited vocabulary, you are going to be in a situation when you don't know a specific word, or you don't know how to answer a question. But did you know that native speakers experience these exact situations? My husband is very handy, which means he likes to fix and repair things around the home. He owns a lot of tools. I don't know the names of 90% of the tools he owns. When he talks about repairing something technical, I don't understand what he's explaining. Does that mean I'm not fluent in English? Does that mean I should spend my weekends learning vocabulary related to tools? I have no interest in learning this vocabulary because I don't need to know it. I can effectively communicate with my husband without knowing the vocabulary and without having in-depth knowledge on the topic. Just like you can communicate with your doctor, plumber, or lawyer in your native language without knowing the same terminology they know or without having the same expertise they have. When you don't know the name of something, describe it. Kevin asks me to pass him the green tube sitting on the toolbox instead of using the specific name for that green tube, because he knows that I don't know what it's called. If you're talking to a doctor, you might ask about the machine that monitors your heart rate rather than saying the name of that machine. If you're at a store, you might ask if they sell something to protect you from the rain if you can't remember the word for umbrella. If you're ordering a dessert at a restaurant and you don't know what it's called, you can say, the one with a strawberry on top on the third shelf. Native speakers do this regularly, and you can too. For your action step this week, once a day, look around any room you're in and practice describing objects using the vocabulary you know instead of using the name of that object. This will also give you the chance to practice using words you already know but don't frequently use, like adjectives. Tip number 4, handling knowledge gaps. When Kevin's not fixing things around the house, he builds complex computer algorithms. I have no technical knowledge in this area, and I can't discuss the topic at the level he can. But I can have long conversations with Kevin about his work by using simple strategies. I ask questions instead of sharing information. I'm honest about not understanding something, and I ask him to explain it another way. I change the topic when I've had enough. You can have amazing conversations with people by asking questions based on the conversation. When Kevin says he made some sort of change to the code he's working on, I ask him simple questions. Was it a difficult change? How long did it take? Is it working now? Why did you need to make that change? Do you have to make any other changes? Notice that my questions are very basic and don't require specialized knowledge or vocabulary. Now, Kevin frequently uses very complex terminology to talk about his work, and I ask him to explain it another way, or to give me an example to help me understand. He's happy to do this. And remember, you can always change the conversation to something you do feel confident discussing. When I've had enough computer talk, I'll make a final comment and then change the topic. I might say, I'm so glad your code is working now. That's great. Do you want to go for a walk after dinner? For your action step this week, think about any conversations you had or heard in any language and practice asking questions in English based on that past conversation. And also practice ending the conversation and changing topics in a polite and natural way. Last week, I asked my community what area of their English they're struggling with the most. Now, before I reveal the answer, what do you think they said? Did you say speaking skills? Well, you're right. 61% said they're struggling with their speaking skills the most. This was not a surprise to me at all because I hear this from my students every single day. Now, in another poll, I asked my students why they're struggling with their speaking skills. The number one reason at 42% was a lack of vocabulary. 36% said it's feeling shy, nervous, and scared. 11% said incorrect pronunciation, and 10% said a lack of grammar. And many students added their own comments and said it's a lack of practice. So if it's all right with you, I'd like to give you some advice. My honest advice, my brutally honest advice about why you're struggling with your speaking skills and how to fix that. First, let's talk about a lack of vocabulary because this was the number one choice at 42%. Now, on the one hand, I agree with this statement because if you don't have the words, you're not able to form sentences. You can't open your mouth and share ideas because that takes words. So I do agree with this, but on the other hand, I think you have a lot of vocabulary and you just don't realize how much you have.
For example, think of how many words I'm using in this video. If you can understand these words, even if you only understand 50%, and you count how many words I used in this video, you would be quite surprised by how much you actually know. Or just open up the first page of a textbook or a children's story in a language that you don't know and see how unfamiliar it looks to you compared to anything you would look at in English and how many words you actually know in English. The reality is that most native speakers, our daily speech is formed by a small number of words, maybe 1,000 to 2,000 words in an average daily use. So if you learned 3 to 6 new words per day, in 1 year, you would have the vocabulary that you needed to have basic conversations. Now, more realistically, you probably need about 20,000 or 35,000 words to fully communicate your ideas on a wide variety of topics. But think of how many you already know. So if you divide that by 2, the number of words you already know, you only need to know about 25 new words per day for 1 year to reach that full vocabulary. Another part of the problem, if I'm being brutally honest, and perhaps I'm even part of this problem, is that teachers like myself, we release these videos saying you must know these 10 C1 expressions to speak confidently. But the reality is, if I'm being brutally honest, that's just not true. Sure, you can absolutely add these words to your vocabulary, all the words that we claim are must know, need to know, learn these now, but it isn't actually true. You don't actually need to know these words. They're useful to know, but are they must know if I'm being brutally honest? Most likely not. And another problem, probably why you think it's a lack of vocabulary, is you're too focused on forming more advanced sentences, C1 sentences. Now, I make these lessons for you on C1 vocabulary because you need them for your IELTS. You need them for a job interview. You need them if you're writing an academic paper or you're giving a formal presentation. But in your day-to-day speech, the reality is, if I'm being brutally honest, you don't need them. I don't use the word utilize in my daily speech. I might use the word utilize 3 to 5 times a year, whereas I use the word use every single day. I probably use it 20 times in this video. So on the one hand, although I agree that it's absolutely important to expand your vocabulary, I also feel like you probably have enough vocabulary right now to start forming sentences and to start speaking, and you can just add on more words as you go every single day. Now, a tip for you is to actually not learn words, to learn entire phrases, because we don't communicate with individual words. You need to know how to use that word in an entire sentence, a phrase. So focus on learning phrases that you can learn one phrase and you can instantly use it in your vocabulary, in your speech, and you'll already feel more confident communicating. Now let's talk about feeling shy, nervous, or scared, because 36% of students said this. In my honest opinion, I feel like this is probably the biggest barrier, mainly because this isn't an area that's focused on in language learning. The focus is on learning vocabulary, learning grammar, learning correct pronunciation, but it's not about managing your emotions, understanding your mindset, understanding what it's like to speak in public and providing strategies to fix that. My brutally honest advice to you is that it's totally normal to feel shy, nervous, and scared. Those feelings most likely aren't going to go away in the near future. They're going to be with you, and you need to learn how to open your mouth and speak even with that feeling in your stomach, even with that nervousness. You can't let that feeling in you, in your body or in your mind, you can't let that prevent you from speaking. You need to take action now, and the more you practice, the more you speak, the smaller and smaller that feeling will become, but it will likely still be with you, if I'm being brutally honest, even after you've been practicing your speaking for months or years. I still get that feeling of nervousness even when I sit down to record a YouTube video and there is no one around me. I'm not even in public. I still feel nervous, and I think that's a good thing because it shows that I care about making a quality video for you. I care about your feedback and your reaction to this video. So just know that it is totally normal to have that feeling. And honestly, the best way to fight that feeling is just by practicing. Practice, practice, practice now, and that feeling will get less and less. Let's talk about a lack of grammar, because 10% of students say it's the reason why they're struggling. The thing you need to remember is that when you're speaking in the real world, you are no longer a language learner. In a classroom environment, you are a language learner. If you open your mouth to speak, the teacher will stop you in the middle of speaking to tell you about a grammar mistake. This makes you focus on your grammar a lot, which I understand is important when you are in a classroom environment because you're there to improve these specific areas. But the problem arises when that same student goes out into the real world and still focuses on their grammar when they're speaking. When you're speaking in the real world, you need to focus on the ideas you're sharing. You can make a grammar mistake. That's okay. Native speakers make mistakes. If you were to watch this video very critically and look at every single sentence, I'm sure you would find grammar mistakes because I'm speaking without notes. I'm opening my mouth and speaking, and it's just normal for human beings to make mistakes. Native speakers make mistakes, and you can make mistakes too. Now, of course, you do want to work on improving these areas, reducing those mistakes, but again, you can't let that prevent you. You have to start speaking with the skills you have now. And the best way to really know what areas of your English, your grammar, your sentence structure you need to improve is to record yourself. And just like I suggested, if you watch every part of this video, you would find mistakes. So you can do the same thing for yourself. You can record yourself telling yourself about your daily routine, and you can watch that video and you can listen line for line and try to understand what mistakes you commonly make. Choose one, the mistake that keeps coming up. Maybe you forget to add that S on he, she, it, verb conjugations in the present simple, and this is your area to improve for the entire week or how long it takes you. So get out there, start speaking. Just know that native speakers aren't listening for your mistakes. Your English teacher absolutely is, but in the real world, native speakers are not. Now let's talk about incorrect pronunciation, because 11% of students said this was the reason why they're struggling. This is an important one, and I find it's often neglected both by teachers and by students. So when you learn, let's say 10 phrasal verbs, but if you don't learn how to pronounce them correctly in different sentence structures, different verb tenses, then when you go to speak and use that phrasal verb, if the person replies back and says, sorry, what did you say? I didn't catch that. Can you repeat that? Well, then honestly, you didn't communicate successfully. And it will really feel like you're struggling if the person you're talking to doesn't understand you. So this is an important area and one that you should spend time on. And again, if you're already recording yourself for speaking practice, 1, to focus on what areas of your grammar you need to improve, well then just add on a 3rd and listen for your pronunciation. This could be very difficult for you because you might not know if you're pronouncing a sound incorrectly. So the best thing you can do is listen to audio dictionaries or listen to a native speaker actually say a specific word or phrasal verb and then doing shadowing practice. So repeating after that speaker, that will help you improve that area of your speech that you need to learn correct pronunciation. So this is something that you do need to focus on, but you'll get feedback. How do you know if you need to improve this area of your English? Because people will say 2 things to you. They'll say, "Can you repeat that? I didn't understand you," something like that. So you know, if you get that a lot, you know this is an area you need to improve. Another way you'll know is if you're talking and the person says, "Oh, where are you from?" If your accent is so recognizable that they know you're not a native speaker, so they either ask you where you're from or they say, "I bet you're from Mexico. I bet you're from France," because they hear such a distinct accent that they know you're speaking English with a Mexican accent or with a French accent. So if you hear those 2 things, it might be a sign that you need to improve your pronunciation. If you don't hear those 2 things, then maybe your pronunciation is great as it is. Now remember I said in the comments section, a lot of students said it's a lack of practice. Definitely, if I'm being brutally honest with you, this is true. And this is where I hear a lot of excuses. Do you know what the most common excuses are for a lack of practice? Well, I live in a non-English speaking country. I don't have anyone to speak to. I don't have time. These are the 3 most common excuses. I'm sure you know some other excuses that you've either said yourself or you've heard other students say. Well, just recognize them for what they are. They are excuses. And how do I know this? Because there are so many students who do improve their speaking skills, who learn to speak confidently in non-English speaking countries without a study partner, without speaking to anyone else. So if students are doing this all the time, then it's absolutely possible for you as well. So maybe the first thing you need to do is just recognize that they are excuses. They're not the truth. Because if you feel in your mind that it is true that you can't improve your English speaking skills alone, then you won't even try, because you've already determined that it's not possible. So for right now, I want you to accept that yes, I can improve my English speaking skills alone, and then commit to practicing speaking, opening your mouth and speaking in front of a mirror or by recording yourself and doing this every single day for 2 minutes. That is absolutely something you can achieve. Now let's talk about a lack of time. This is an excuse I hear from students. But the reality is, if I'm being brutally honest, we all have 24 hours a day. Much of that time we spend sleeping, but regardless, we all have the same waking hours per day. It's not a lack of time, it's that right now, improving your speaking skills isn't a priority for you. And there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to prioritize spending time with your family over improving your speaking skills, that is absolutely fine, and that's your decision. But don't pretend like you don't have time. Just say, right now it isn't a priority. I want to focus on being the best mother I can be, being the best father I can be, or I want to focus on learning how to play guitar, or I want to focus on spending more time with my cats, something I definitely prioritize. But that's okay, but just be honest with yourself. Don't sit here and say, oh, I'm struggling to find the time, because the time exists, you're just not allocating the time because it's not a priority, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you are listening to this and you think to yourself, but it is a priority. I need to improve my English speaking skills so I can send my kids to a good school or so I can get a better job. Well, then you need to reflect on that and you need to adjust your schedule to allocate the time to your speaking skills if it truly is a priority. There is a lot of advice online for free to help you become fluent. But what if that advice isn't helping you? What if that advice is actually preventing you from becoming fluent? A lot of students come to me because they're struggling with their fluency. They can't speak confidently, they can't understand native speakers, they're frustrated and they're stuck. They spend a lot of time trying to become fluent, but it's just not working. In this video, I'm going to share some horrible advice that I see online that's preventing you from becoming fluent. First, let's talk about grammar. Of course, you need correct grammar, correct sentence structure in order to form sentences. But I see a lot of advice online that tells students that they need to memorize all verb tenses. Or I see videos where you need to learn all verb tenses and use them in a specific period of time. But did you know that native speakers don't communicate with many of the verb tenses that exist? So if you spend all your time studying these verb tenses, but then you go to speak and you don't actually need these verb tenses in your speech, that time you spend studying isn't helping you. The reality is that the majority of our speech, 90% of native speakers' speech, comes from about 5 different verb tenses. You would be a lot better off mastering these 5 verb tenses and learning how to use them fluently and confidently rather than overwhelming yourself by trying to master every verb tense in English. Now let's talk about vocabulary. Again, of course, you need words. You can't communicate without words. You need a wide range of vocabulary. But do you need to memorize a list of words that all start with A? Do you need to memorize all the phrasal verbs with the word down? And this is where I see a lot of students make mistakes. They get overwhelmed by downloading a list of 20 phrasal verbs with down, or 50 or 100 phrasal verbs with down. And they think they need to memorize them all at once, and somehow knowing all these phrasal verbs with down will help you communicate. But when you're in a meeting, when you're in your IELTS, when you're having a natural conversation, how likely is it that you're going to use all those phrasal verbs with down? And that's the mistake, is memorizing random lists of words rather than focusing on full expressions, full phrases that you can use to communicate in the most common situations that you need to communicate in. Let's keep talking about vocabulary, because a lot of advice I see online tells you that you need to replace an everyday word with an advanced C1 word. Again, this is creating a lot of overwhelm and frustration for students, and they think that they aren't fluent, they can't communicate because their vocabulary is filled with more everyday words rather than advanced C1 words. Now, the reality is that yes, C1 words, advanced vocabulary can be very helpful to you, but in extremely specific situations, like when you're in a job interview, which happens maybe a few times a year, and then you don't go to another job interview again for 5 years or longer, or when you're taking your IELTS or a language exam, or if you're giving a very formal presentation. Yes, this vocabulary can be helpful, but you have to remember that 99% of the time, you are communicating in the real world. And 99% of the time, you don't need to use these C1 words. So don't overwhelm yourself by thinking you need to replace the vocabulary you have now with more advanced vocabulary. That simply isn't true. Now let's talk about your expectations, because online, I see a lot that suggests you can't make mistakes when you're speaking. If you make grammar mistakes or if you have an accent, that you won't be able to pass your IELTS, you won't be able to get a job in an English-speaking country, you won't be taken seriously by native speakers. But that is creating stress and overwhelm because it simply is not true and it's not helping you. You absolutely can make mistakes. And not only can you make mistakes, you absolutely will make mistakes. It's guaranteed that you will make mistakes when speaking English because it's not your first language. And the reality is you make mistakes in your first language as well. So of course you'll also make mistakes in additional languages that you've learned. That's okay. But a lot of the time, students think that they can't make mistakes, or if they're making mistakes, they're not ready. They're not ready to apply for that job. They're not ready to take the IELTS. And there's this advice out there suggesting that you need to wait. You need to wait to take your IELTS, to apply for a job, to try to move to an English-speaking country, to just use your English in social situations. You need to wait until you've learned all the verb tenses, until you've learned C1 vocabulary, until you've replaced all your regular verbs with phrasal verbs, until you've eliminated your accent. But that just simply is not true. And what this advice does, and if students accept this as the truth, what it does is it creates a situation where students are just focusing on input. And they're getting input, input, input. They're consuming the language, but they're not using the language. They're not getting output because they feel they're not ready. They feel their English isn't good enough. But this is a mistake. You need to start getting output, start using your English through speaking, writing from day one, right from a beginner. And if you're not a beginner, if you've already been learning English for many years, well then start today. Don't even wait until tomorrow. The second you finish this video, you can start changing that by using your English. And I see a lot of advice online that suggests that you're going to get to some point in the future where you'll be finished learning English. But that is also just not true, and it sets this expectation that, again, you need to wait now because your English isn't good enough now. When you get to this undetermined point in the future, then your English will be good enough. Then you can start speaking, applying for jobs, or pass your IELTS. But the thing is, there is no point in the future. You will always be trying to improve your English. You're a lifelong learner, so you need to accept that where you are today is where you are today, is what your level is now, and you need to start communicating with the language you have and just make effort every day, small effort every day to improve and improve and improve. And as you go on, your level will get higher and higher, but you'll be communicating the entire time.
Now I'm going to share 5 easy habits to follow every day to become fluent. Daily habit number 1, listen to native speakers. This may seem like an obvious daily habit, but let me tell you more about it. I want you to listen to native speakers in a natural context. Yes, right now you're listening to a native speaker, but this isn't a natural context. I'm not having a conversation with my friends or with my coworkers. I'm not out in the real world. I'm teaching you something. So to improve your listening skills, to learn vocabulary, to learn sentence structure, to improve your pronunciation, you can do all of that by listening to native speakers in a real context. So this is native speakers on TV, movies, the news, podcasts, and YouTube videos that aren't teaching you English. Now, with this daily habit, know that there's a big difference between active practice and passive practice. And this daily habit is more of a passive practice. You won't be actively studying the conversation. You're going to listen to the native speakers passively, so you can do this when you're making breakfast, getting ready, doing your hair, makeup, or when you're commuting. Those are perfect times to put in your earphones, listen to native speakers passively. Now, don't worry, even though this is passive, you are still learning so much. You're of course going to improve your listening skills of real English, fast-speaking native speakers. Your brain is processing all of that advanced sentence structure. And you're also learning new words, and you're learning them in context so you understand how that word is used in real speech. And as a bonus tip, make sure you find content that you enjoy listening to, because if you enjoy the process, you're more likely to do it. Daily habit number 2, speak for 5 minutes. Most students are language absorbers, language learners, but they're not language users. When you open your mouth and speak, you are using your grammar, sentence structure, vocabulary, pronunciation. You're using everything that you're learning. It is mandatory that you speak in English every single day, daily habits every single day for at least 5 minutes. And let me stop you right there, because you do not need a speaking partner. You can absolutely do this on your own in your room without anyone around. You don't need someone to hear the words out of your mouth in order for you to practice. All you need to do is open your mouth and speak, and you can do that anytime, any day, no matter where you live and no matter what your situation is. To make this fun and easy for you to do, I have a free resource that I know you'll love. It's called a random question generator. Simply Google that and you will find lots of results, and I'll share one of my favorites in the description. Now, all you need to do is go onto this website, you click a button, and it generates a question. You can answer that question out loud, and then when you're ready for the next one, you just click the button again and you get another question. And you can keep clicking that button, getting random questions, answering these questions to get active speaking practice. Make it your goal to answer 3 questions a day. But remember, your goal isn't perfection. Your goal is simply to practice, to open your mouth and start speaking. Daily habit number 3, shadowing practice. Do you know what this is? When you shadow, it means you imitate someone and you try to match their speech exactly. So here's how you can complete this exercise. Choose any audio or video, listen to one sentence, hit pause, and then repeat the sentence aloud. So let's try this right now. I'll say one sentence. What do you want to do tonight? Now remember, you should pause the video and repeat it out loud, which means you're opening your mouth and speaking, and your goal is to match what I said as closely as possible. So I'll say it again. What do you wanna do tonight? Now I said it very slowly. There are controllers on every platform where you can reduce the speed so you can really hear those sounds. Because notice, I said, what do you? What do ya? Want to? Wanna. What do you wanna do tonight? So you can start It's slow, half the speed, and when you're comfortable with it, you can play it at full speed. What do you want to do tonight? But remember, you're not just listening, you're opening your mouth and you're shadowing. You're trying to match it as closely as possible. So now I'll say it at a natural pace, and I want you to open your mouth and shadow me. Try to say it exactly. What do you want to do tonight? So do that for 5 to 10 minutes a day, and you will greatly improve your listening skills, and you'll improve your pronunciation, and you're also practicing your speaking. Daily habit number 4, read for 10 minutes. Reading is one of the best ways to improve your overall fluency because you are learning so many different skills at the same time. When you read, you learn advanced grammar, you learn sentence structure, you learn vocabulary, and you learn in context. So you're not just studying one word and the definition, you see how that word is used in a context, the grammar that's needed, the sentence structure. So you learn so much with this one activity. Now remember that your listening practice, your daily habit number 1, listening, was more of a passive activity. When you read, this is more of an active activity. So you can focus on what you're reading. If you don't know a word, you can look it up and learn that word. You can notice what verb tense is being used in a sentence. So you can turn this into more active practice. But just like with reading, make sure you learn with content you enjoy. And also read content that's relevant to your daily life. This will make sure that you're learning vocabulary that you need for your career or your daily life. So if your goal is to advance your career and you work in marketing, well then you can Google marketing blogs and you can find a blog to read for your daily habit, and that way you're learning all vocabulary related to marketing that you can use for your daily life. Daily habit number 5, write a daily summary. This is another great habit to get active practice. Now you're writing a daily summary, but you don't have to show anyone. This is completely private. And when you're writing, really take the time to make sure that your writing is both grammatically correct and professional. So your formatting, your punctuation, everything is correct. So this is truly an active practice and you're really thinking about everything you're writing. So when you write, focus on your sentence structure, focus on your verb conjugation, and focus on your word choices as well. And try to improve it, try to make it more advanced. Now maybe you don't know what to write about. Don't worry, let me give you many suggestions and you can choose one or you can rotate between these and choose a different one every day. You can summarize your day. You can write about the best part of your day. Write about one thing you learned today. 3 unusual things you saw or heard today. You can discuss a problem and focus on the solution. Or you can write about your favorite meal of the day. It doesn't matter what you write about, the point is that you're writing every day. Amazing job! Think of everything you learned in this masterclass. Do you want me to keep sharing tips and advice with you? If you do, put let's go, put let's go in the comments. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And here's another lesson I know you'll love. Make sure you watch it now.